Okay, guys, we are back. We're back, a back, a backity back. We're backity backity back. Oh, we're back, back, a backity back. We're back, a backity back. We back, we back, we back, we back. Ooh, ooh. I have no idea why that thing like just. So I'm just gonna say we had like young technical difficulties. Welcome back to everybody. If you don't know what we're talking about today, we are talking about colorism within the
My
Black
bad.
community. Next week we're going to be talking about colorism within the brown community. The week after that, we're going to be talking about colorism within the white communication and the Caucasian communication, if there is colorism and what that looks like for them. And then in the fourth week, we're going to be doing like a colorism debrief. And I've got some guests, hosts coming in to talk to us about what that means in the world of today and how we can really make sure that we are thriving in every situation that we have, how to communicate our opinions and our when people give us microaggressions, how to best tackle things like that. So I have people who are specialists in those departments who do offer training, who will be coming in on the fourth week. To just round up this colorism discussion. I made sure I want it to be over like the month because I think it's a really important conversation to have. And I don't want it to just be like a movement where it's just like, oh, we talk about it once and then we just forget about it. I think it's important that we really continue to have these discussions because there are people who don't realize that things are happening because it doesn't affect them. But the more we talk about them, the more people actually realize what's going on and we can really sit down and figure out how do we change this? What strategies can we use? And so on and so forth. So, baby girl, you were saying
Um,
before this
before
Instagram was a
was
hater and didn't want us to be great or whatever.
oh my goodness. Let me just collect my thoughts really quickly. But I think what I was trying to say is it's a lot easier for them to hop onto the wave of, bashing the black woman because um I feel like some of them haven't had like good experiences with people
Mm-hmm.
they were growing up with. And not saying that's the case for everybody, some truly are just ignorant, but some may have been rejected by a black girl in the past, and they're using that little moment of like, oh, I didn't get what I want, as kind of a
Yeah.
defiance to like, oh, there's all these people bashing this person. Let me go see what's going on and like, join
Mm-hmm.
in on that. And with what you were talking about, how in the UK that whole thing that was going on, basically the tweets that were exposed from this one YouTuber who was receiving a good chunk of the backlash were from 2012. And
Mm-hmm.
around
When
that
she was in
time,
year
year
nine,
nine, so like start, I don't know what that equivalent is. What would that equivalent be in
it's like
Canadian?
13, 14.
Okay, okay. So about high school. So starting about high
Yeah.
school, I can guarantee a lot of people at that point were still trying to figure out who they were. So it was more
Mm-hmm.
so just going by what everybody else was doing. So, being African wasn't it. Like plain black and simple, it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Only until recently, as Mamu said before, like, there's a lot of pictures of us being oiled up and all that, going viral and stuff and people becoming models from like photo shoots and stuff, it kind of put Africa back in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like, it's bittersweet because it was like, you don't forget those times where like in like grade nine and stuff, people were on that hating African train,
Yeah.
oh, you're from Africa, like, kind of have like a snide remark to it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I saw it too a lot in my own community, like at school and stuff, like people who were, who I grew up with were revoking their African status, saying like, oh, I'm not African, I'm just black, I'm just black. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, what's the issue of being African and all that kind of stuff? So
Yeah.
all these little things that people are exposed to at like different periods of time in their life really do shape their thinking into, wow, where they go to at this point. And unfortunately, a lot of them remain in that ignorant state, and they make comments like, "Oh, I have to marry somebody who's lighter than me," or like, "I don't want any like, dark-skinned babies. I don't want nappy-haired babies. I don't
Yeah.
want none of that." And like some try to say, "Oh, I just don't want them to go through the same struggles I went through as a kid. I don't want that for my
Mm-hmm.
child." And I'm just like, the only reason why your child would be going through any of those struggles is because other children who didn't have the love installed of them of their own color are projecting their internal hate on your child and causing them to feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if you brought up your child in a way of love and you brought them up to be accepting of their color and to realize, you're made in this way, you're beautiful for who you are, nobody could tell you. No one could tell them anything. No one could tell them anything. And those comments just, it's kind of just like, it hurts people, and like it hurts
Mm.
what young girls who are growing, because like the skin lightening whatchamacallit, the global rate of marketing is around estimated 4.7 million US dollars.
The
So
bleaching creams and the
bleaching creams, lightening creams, that's
Holy
industry. Yeah, it's
moly.
about 4.7 million US dollars. So like, people are actively going out and changing the way they look because of
Yeah.
people telling them to. Um, oh, how also normal people don't know how genetics work. No, I'm telling you, I'm telling you, people really don't. People don't know basic science, and like the thing. Honestly,
Guys, I don't have my glasses, so I can't really read the comments. So I don't want to be squinting everywhere. So I'm just gonna get my guests to read the comments on my behalf. I love
no
you guys. I
problem.
appreciate you, but
No
the way my
problem.
eyesight is set up.
No. John Marie said, "Come to the Bahamas. That's all you're here." And just basically, Mamu said earlier that constantly hear black as in dark are too loud, too much, as expressing ourselves and not taking prep like we used to do is wrong. Okay, so that
Mm,
derogative, like
mm.
we're being too much, and this and that. You have to realize we were never given the space to truly be who we were. A lot of us had to repress our personalities. I myself
Mm,
definitely had to repress like certain aspects of my personality just because of the people I was around with.
mm,
I'm a floater, I've had different friends. I wouldn't say, I had a certain preference of who I wanted to hang out with. I kind of just hung out with
yeah.
whoever wanted to hang out with me. So
Mm-hmm.
I've had white friends, I've had black friends, I've had Asian friends, I've had Indian friends and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
it was only in my black group of friends that like there was always that kind of like, issue with colorism, because like, it I don't know why. Like a lot of people said, a lot of it is internalized hatred towards ourselves. But just the fact that, in those settings where you think you could be safe and be able to expose,
Mm-hmm.
your feelings and stuff, you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of looked at like, or people haven't gone through the same experiences you have. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like they can't relate to you in that setting because everything's been fine for them. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, are you just taking it out of context, or, did you really experience that? And like
Yeah.
when you have a lot of people who have these experiences, they're not going to want to share what they've been going through. They're not going to kind of contribute to the conversation. And that's how we just allow the colorism to continue, because people aren't willing to own up to, maybe comments they've made, comments they've heard, family members who's
Mm-hmm.
even said anything about color appearance, and then go from there. Because as
Mm-hmm.
John Marie was saying in Bahamas, I've I'm not gonna lie, I'm not trying to like call anybody out or anything, but I have noticed in like the Caribbean community too, from like my other friends and what they've told me and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a lot of colorism in that,
Yeah.
having nick terms of like red bone, yellow bone, lighty, this and that,
Mm.
and it was kind of just like, I've even heard comments from like people who I thought I was close with, who would say,
Yeah.
I can't have like a dark skinned baby, like they're gonna have to live with my mama, like I would not take care of that baby. And it's
Mm.
like, how much do you hate the concept of quote unquote dark
Yeah.
that you wouldn't wish it upon your child, Like, what is
Bruh.
so bad about you as a black person, why is this whole shade spectrum thing, like, the factor of how you're, when you're gonna reproduce and stuff like that. And like they said, with
Mm-hmm.
genetics too, it all depends who you end up with, because if your partner is darker, there's a 50-50 chance of what your kid's gonna come out looking like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just like you said, it shouldn't be a conversation, because I feel like it gets talked about and then it loses its traction, and like it keeps coming
Exactly.
up over time. And really and truly, because it's such a deep, deep issue, it's not something you can just talk about. You're gonna have to
No.
undo the ropes. You're gonna have to go back to slavery time, because this is where
Mm-hmm.
it all roots back to, slavery, because you know people with the lighter skins were often put inside the house and made to be maids and stuff for the plantation owners, whereas the darker people were to tend to the fields. And it just that ownership, that mentality, that enslavement really hasn't left a lot of people's minds. Even though they
Mm-hmm.
may not think about
Mm-hmm.
it intentionally, it hasn't left the minds of people. So they're internalizing it and projecting it on like little things that they may not realize it. So by covering it up and saying it's a preference, or saying, oh, this is what I was exposed to, this and that, it's like, no, you're not willing to adapt, you're not willing to think, you're not willing to reflect on yourself and see why you're
Mm-hmm.
having these ill thoughts of, your and colorist comment you made. Because with a lot of things too, when you try to call people out on it, it's just a lot of not backlash, but like a lot of defense, like defense immediately saying,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't mean it that way, like you're just overtaking it and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you have to realize, if someone made a comment about you saying it, it's probably something they've already heard before, something
Yeah,
that's already been
definitely.
said. And you, as someone who's supposed to be, a kinfolk, you're supposed to understand, you're supposed to, I'm supposed to be able to share my struggle with you, and then we can discuss it and talk about it. So, that
Mm-hmm.
whole term of, not all skin folk are kinfolk. Yeah, yeah,
Listen.
yeah. I'm telling you, because like, the worst people who treated me for my skin color have been my own fellow Black people.
Yeah.
And it's so sad to see. It's so sad to see, because I'm fortunate that I was living in Canada and I didn't receive it as bad as some like my cousins who lived in the States and all that. But just the
Mm.
fact that I even have something to say about it should go to tell you, how many more people need to join this conversation and need to address the colorism we have in our community. And it's
Yeah.
not going away. I don't think it's going to be going away for a very,
No.
very long time. And yeah, I just,
I just think what I'm beginning to realize is like with a lot of topics that make people uncomfortable, we're so afraid of being uncomfortable that we don't even
mhm,
want to venture in that direction. Like when people
absolutely.
talk about racism, for example, it's so uncomfortable for you to talk about racism in between different races,
Mhm.
and so we just avoid talking about it, period.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if we
Absolutely.
actually like sat down in that discomfort, we would realize that there's so many lessons that we can learn through that discomfort.
Hmm.
So I think like the reason why I'm so happy that like we're even able to like openly talk about it in this way is
Hmm.
that even if I feel uncomfortable and I feel like I've personally been attacked by certain comments, that discomfort is a sign to me that there's something I need to work on,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And so I think what we need to be embracing, and that's why like I keep saying it's not about just a conversation. And that's why like in the last week, I want to make sure I'm equipping us with tools that allow us to go forward and not
Hmm.
just converse about it, but actually
Hmm.
tools that allow us to implement it in our everyday lives.
Hmm.
Because we could have this conversation and once it's gone, that's it,
Yeah.
right? But if in my way, like if I meet somebody and they say something and I can make that an opportunity to be a learning opportunity, that's one less person
Hmm.
with prejudice. It might be uncomfortable, it might be an inconvenience. They might not even listen, But if there's even an opportunity or a speck of hope that it would allow for a ripple effect of change, I feel like it's really important that we at least try.
And
Yeah.
like, to kind of go on with your point about it being uncomfortable, and like a lot of people who haven't had the experience too, they may feel like they can't contribute to the conversation because they haven't directly experienced, the colorist mindset, or like, experiences of colorism. And a lot of things we do as Black people, we kind of avoid situations by laughing it off and joking it off, saying, this and that. And it's just kind of like, there are things you can joke about and there are ways you can like go about things, but having these conversations and stuff isn't like, a joke setting. Like, it's something that needs to be addressed because it's going to continue to affect people forever, forever, forever. And it might be uncomfortable now, but imagine, when it's your own child now that's coming to you asking about, why are the kids making fun of me because of my skin color? How could you, how could you address to that? How could you address to them if you yourself haven't even begun to understand why people are acting the way they are?
Yeah.
So John,
No, 100%. Like, I think, is it John?
Yeah.
John, you should totally join this conversation and give us your view on the Caribbean side of colorism. Oh, and if anybody's just joined or they don't know what we're talking about colorism in the Black community and what that means, what that looks like, and
John, watching the conversation, sis. We see the
come through, baby
girl.
girl.
Come through. Let's go. Right now. Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
We're waiting for you, John.
Oh, yes, Mamu. Mamu said people have to be open to learn. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
If you don't have an open mindset to accept the information you're about to receive, like, if you already, like, there's people who are willing to like listen, but there aren't people who are willing to understand. And I think that I think that goes in hand with like empathy, A lot of people lack the luster to care for others unless it's happened to them directly. So for people who haven't experienced colorism, or, who have been on the rewarding end of colorism, they're not going to want to have that conversation because it's benefiting them. Like, they're gaining from him. What do I need to, learn from this? And they'll just continue passing that mentality down on to other people, to their children, and then you're just going to continue that whole chain of that. And if you're not willing to like learn and accept that there is a conversation that has to be had, like spoken about, then you can't progress, because it's like talking to a brick wall. How much can you really say before they understand? So unfortunately, you can't force people to change their ways of thinking, but I feel like with enough pressing on the matter and enough exposure, people can come to terms with it and like be able to have that conversation in the long run. Oh yeah, he said a lot of people also think if it's not happening to me, it's not relevant. Not saying it's anything, but yeah, no, absolutely.
You're right, baby girl.
Absolutely. Yemi, you also need to join this live.
Yeah, Yemi, I'm calling on you too. Jean Marie and Yemi, y'all are next.
Y'all have been summoned. I'd like to hear from you. So yeah, so that's kind of just been like kind of a recap of colorism for me. I apologize, y'all. Like, I had stuff written out, but you just get talking and you just, kind of forget your points and kind of just go with the flow of the direction. So if anyone wants to have any side conversations with me, you definitely more than can. Otherwise, keep continuing.
I would love to have you on my podcast if you're down.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm gonna hit you up after this, and we can talk.
Hey, let's go. Anyway, thanks for having me. I'm so glad
thanks for coming.
Able to do this, perfect entertainment in this quarantine season. So, you know, what else am I saying? I'm not saying anything, but
Thank you
yeah.
for coming. I honestly appreciate you so much and so much of your input. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Good night, my darling.
Good night.
Okay. So, okay. We're gonna start with John because I called on John first. So Miss John Marie's gonna be joining us in a second. If you don't know what we're talking about colorism. What's good, baby?
What you saying?
You know. We just out here talking about colorism or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
I hope you're staying safe. I am.
Of course, washing our hands. I wish I had sanitizer. I have like water in here, so occasionally I'll just, wash my hands in my plants or whatever. So introduce yourself to the peoples and tell them how you would describe yourself. Okay.
I got a call from my favorite roommate. Mariam.
Who's calling you?
Mariam, I got stage fright, so I had to tell her come on the call with me. See, I can't talk on here by myself, so Mariam gotta be my little.
This is a safe space, I promise. No judgment. This is all love and appreciation.
Anyways, let me just going off of what you and man.
Okay, wait. Hold on a minute. Introduce yourself first, and then tell us how you would describe your skin tone. Thank you.
Okay, hi y'all. I'm John Marie. But I go by John. I just graduated from Trent. Your girl is alumni.
A whole graduates.
Alumni.
Ha! Whoa. Get it, baby girl.
I baby but yeah, you summoned me, so I came to share. Mario summoned me. I came to share about my experience back home in the Caribbean. I'm from the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm.
About colorism. Thank you, John.
So John is here. Look at God. Won't he do it? Hallelujah.
What you requesting now, yeah?
We in trouble.
But back home, like, I don't know. It's like it's there, but people don't see it at all. Like,
really,
they walking around there Stevie Wonder. Like, they don't see a they don't see a
raw.
They don't see it. And like, honestly, before I came to Canada, I had the same mentality. I'm sorry.
Really?
I came to Canada with the same mentality. I came to Canada thinking, listen, I want my turn. I want nice, pretty hair and skin. I want one nice little. Back then, I was thinking one little Indian little something, you know. But like with my experience, I back home they called me mixed breed, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
It was a good thing to other people, but like to me, I just felt I wasn't placed. I don't know. I didn't feel placed, if you know what I mean. Like my mommy fully black, and my dad is half white and Trini but not. So the way I look, people back home, like, they're darker skinned, right? It's the dominant race back home. They're black people. So when they see me, when they saw me, it was like, so I have some light skinned friends, I have some white friends, blah blah blah. But growing up, it was almost like my black friends would be like, "Oh, you so light skinned, you so white, you too this for that." And then my Long Island friends, they'd be like, "My girl, you too ghetto, you so ghetto this, that, ghetto that." And I'm just like,
Really?
I mean, where y'all want me to sit? Like,
Take a struggle.
And then, like, I would have, for me, like, I'm the type of person, I don't like to be put on the spot. You put me on the spot, you and Mana and y'all, little crazy ass. But back then, like, the adults back home, like, to this day, they still have that mentality as, like, oh, the lighter child's complexion is, the prettier they are, the looser their curls are, the better the hair, you know. And I had that mentality. I wanted a white man with money.
See, so what changed then? Because how do you just like what happens in between from here to here?
Me, like, when I came to Canada was when I was educated. I met people like you. I met people like Mariam and Makila and Kwame and Sylvia and Kirsten and Jabez. Like, I don't just being around y'all and I guess going to TACTU meetings and going to all those talks and all of that. Like, it really taught me a lot on just what it means to be black. I never knew what it meant to be black, because being black back home is not a good thing. Like, excuse me, I ain't got the Rona, I promise. Anyway.
Coronavirus. I don't know, the way you be drinking that water makes me think like,
but what I was saying, Mario?
You were talking about how you learned after you moved here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm so glad Mariam is on FaceTime with you.
She helps me get back when I lose track. But yeah, for real. No, but for me, like, when I came to Canada, like, I didn't know what the hell it meant to be black. I thought it was bad to be black. When I told my my mom and her sisters about my partner, Kwame, I promise I ain't got the Rona, but I swallowed it wrong. Something in my throat. But when I told we all have that one aunt in our family, right? We all have that one aunt who they mouth just ain't got no law. It just go.
Sometimes it's more than one. Sometimes it's just all of them. They just have the verbal diarrhea in their spirit. It's just in there.
I'm laughing at Yami and John.
I feel like John should be next after Yami. I might regret that.
When I told my family, like, not all of them had this reaction, but 2 of them had the reaction. When I told my family, about him, where he from, first thing I say, when I say he's African, I didn't say where from Africa. I just said he's African. Caribbeans got stereotypes. What?
That was already a big deal.
Exactly. Caribbeans, we have a stereotype on Africans. We automatically think they like more than one woman. We automatically think they all about the black magic, just stuff like that. Anyway, let me not expose my mother. But I was gonna say what she said Mariam when she first met Mariam, but I can't do it like that. But when
you can slide into my DMs after this and tell me, I want the tea. Spill the tea.
Okay, Mariam's so funny. funny. It's a funny story. I promise y'all, my mommy ain't racist. I promise, okay? So when my mommy...
Can I please say something really quickly? Can I just say, it's also a matter of, this was her grandma's first time having conversations about this with somebody who wasn't Arab.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Really?
Who wasn't Arab, who just wasn't Western, I guess. Like
Raw.
American.
Mad.
So,
okay, I'm listening. I'm just grabbing my charger because my phone's about to die.
That's okay. You go on. So, my mother come in the house now. Come in the house. My mommy, my Grammy. First of all, they gone looking in Mariam's room. Who's do that? They gone looking in her room, see if her room clean.
They gotta make sure.
Right? So she came in the room and my Grammy, she couldn't hear Mariam what she was saying. So Mariam introduced herself. I'm from Tanzania. Oh, and I Muslim and whatnot. So mommy heard what Mariam said. Clearly. Y'all know what the hell come out my mother mouth? Y'all really know what the hell come my mother mouth.
What'd she say?
My mommy say my Grammy didn't hear her. So my mommy was like, what she say?
No, your grandma asked me where I was from, and I said I was Tanzanian, and she goes, oh, but your name is not African, and I said yes, because I'm also half Arab.
Yeah.
That's when your mom.
Oh.
So my Grammy say, Pam, what that is or where that is. Mommy say, oh, mommy, she from the Taliban them. I was like, God, you can't be coming up in people's country saying that kind of thing.
She said what she said, and she said it with her chest.
And
Big
then
up
my
stuff.
Grammy just brushed it off. She just brushed it off. Like,
Your grandma said,
oh, yeah. Grammy just like, oh, okay. Anyways, let me finish my story because I want to hold up you all night. Y'all, I promise my mommy got sense, okay? She got sense.
I'm dead. Oh my gosh.
But anyways, when I told my aunt about my Kwame, and I showed them, they automatically assume those two things now, woman and all that shit. So, and then the first thing my auntie say, nah, she like white man, and right now she married to a white man, 20 years old, love money. She like white man, okay? Hell, no. But the first thing she say, oh, he ugly. And I say, okay, now let me ask you why you think he ugly. So then she was like, he black. And I was like, so what the hell are you saying? I was like, yeah, she said that. And then she was like, cause he black. And then my daddy, my Grammy, my Grammy is like, don't listen to this ass. He ain't ugly. And I was like, that's okay, Grammy. I know. But that's just the mentality of most of the, I guess I could say, family island people. Because I grew up with a lot of family island people. I don't know about the people in Nassau on Freeport on that. Because they got, let me not start on that. That's for Danielle.
I feel like we should just like invite you to another live session, and we should just call it like story time with John Marie. Listen, we're making it a date. We're gonna have a story time with you.
Listen, okay. No, colorism is a very big thing in the Caribbean, and like we be dissing out on people, and like it's sad, and like I like Mana said, like I have some friends who be saying like they ain't want no black baby, or if their baby come out black or ugly and saying they ain't really want on it, and like I don't. When I hear shit like that, it is bother me, just because like it. I don't even know. I can't say it without exposing, but it just bothers me. I wish they would grow out of that mentality, out of that Bahamian small box, Caribbean small box mind with just four corners, and just like.
John, is
Girl,
that
you
me?
gonna have to read the comments because I can't see nothing.
Yeah, that's midnight.
I forgot my glasses.
Danielle say, I have a light-skinned best friend and I dated a dark-skinned man. And my sister asked me why I went for the ugly one. Like, legit. If I stand up next to my light-skinned best friend right now, and someone asks who prettier, who uglier, who this, who that, who better, they automatically gonna assume the light skin. It's just like the lighter you are at home, the better you are. Like you just sit on this high. It's almost it's a frustrating topic.
Listen, I appreciate the value you brought to the conversation. I'm gonna let you go through a hot second.
Yeah,
you definitely made us laugh. You made our evening. I think we should definitely have a story time with you. So I'm gonna hit you up for the dates.
I got a lot of stories, y'all.
Okay. So thank you for coming. We're gonna hit you up soon and we're gonna talk more about this topic. So I'm gonna let Miss John Marie go. Bye, sweetie. And I think the next person to go in is going to be Yami. For the people who've just come in, we're talking about colorism in the Black community.
Whoa,
what does that do? What does it mean?
Hello.
Oh my gosh, this is exclusive. We have Miss Yami in the building.
So this is weird, guys.
My gosh.
This is
hey, baby
weird.
girl.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good, guys. My throat's a little dry. I don't have the Rona, I promise.
Coronavirus. So introduce yourself to the peoples, and also tell us how you would describe your skin tone.
Okay. So we're just gonna go with the basics of who I am because there's a lot of stories in that.
You don't want to give them the whole 9 yards.
Fine. Okay.
Birth
Hi, guys.
certificate.
Girl. I'm Yamakani, or as Yami, everybody calls me that, my family, my friends, everybody, so don't feel some type of ways. So I was born in South Africa. My mom's from Zim, my dad's from Malawi, so we got some mix in there. We got some people from everywhere else, so forth. So wow, what color am I? Gee, that's whoa. Okay,
how would you describe your skin tone?
Describing my skin tone, I go off of how South Africa basically has defined the whole country. So when apartheid happened,
yes, I knew you were gonna go there. I'm so glad you joined this too.
I had to bring that
Love
up.
it.
So people who don't know what apartheid is, to put it short, it was basically segregation in South Africa of the whole country. So it was the whites, the coloreds, and then the blacks. And in the blacks was Japanese. I don't know what happened there. Don't ask. So when I think of myself on that scale. So I very much think I'm in the dark skin area. The country sees me as that. I identify that, no problem. But yeah, obviously I'm not as dark as some other people are, but in those terms I am. And even if I look at my family on both sides, well, in Malawi, I'm lighter than my cousins and the rest of my family. But in Zim, I'm darker than the rest of my family. So whichever country I'm in, it always changes. Yeah, so that's there. My stories of colorism, my gosh, I've had different ones from all countries. I think the first one started with my cousin from Zim, which was actually that's where the coconut came in. So if anybody doesn't know what coconut is, it's where people basically are like, oh, you're white on the inside, but you're black or brown on the outside. So what happened is, I remember this so vividly. My grandma was like, okay, you got to go get eggs. So my cousin and I were like, hey, whatever, we'll go. So I was walking with her, and I remember I can understand Shona, but I can't speak Shona. So what happened was, we were walking and everyone's saying hi, hello, whatever, and I obviously was replying in English, and I'm like, I'm good, blah blah. And my cousin suddenly turns to me and she looks at me and she's like, I just realized you're like a coconut. And at that time I didn't know what that meant. I was young, and I was like, what? And she's like,
what?
It's like you don't want to be black and you don't want to be from Zim because you don't speak the language. And I was like, what do you mean? And then so what she did, because she thought that I didn't understand Shona, was she started talking to the store person, and she was basically explaining, like, this is my cousin. She doesn't really speak Shona. She thinks she's white, but she's black, and they're making these jokes in front of me. And obviously, I'm like, I can hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. Like, I know that you're making fun of me. And at the time, my accent was still like in the middle of like South African Canadian, so it was a little weird. No one could place where I was. And then she was like, oh, like, she thinks that because now she moved to Canada, whatever, she's better than us, blah, blah, blah. And I'm, like, strictly confused. Like, what? So I didn't say anything, and, like, we were walking home, and then, like, she started to point out, like, because at the time I was, like, I think 12 or something. She was like, oh, like, I can see your stretch marks. Doesn't that bother you? And I'm like, well, like, why would that bother me? And she was like, yeah, it's just like, wouldn't you think about, like, lightening them or something, or using whatever? And I'm obviously still shocked, because I'm like, okay, first you came for me before, and now you're coming for me again. And I was like, whatever, I brushed it off, because, you know, it's my cousin. I can't fight her in the middle of the street. It's also in Zim, so let me not start drama. So I got home, and I told my mom, and I was like, okay, like, this is what my cousin said. And then she was like, oh, like, you don't understand Shauna, you don't understand what's going on, like, you don't understand the life we're living, blah, blah, blah. And my mom was like, whoa. She's like, well, why didn't you tell me this when, because we're visiting my grandma, and we was like 13 hours away in South Africa. And my mom was like, oh, you should have told me earlier. And I was like, well, I didn't know how to tell you, because everybody's in the room, and, like, already my cousin, my mom's sister, is already very, like, not to, like John said, spill the tea, but she's a very, like,
expose them, spill the
she's a
tea,
very, like, jealous person ever since the beginning of time. So anything my siblings and I do, and my mom does, and, like, my mom's, like, maybe a tinge darker than her, so, like, which my mom is lighter than me, but so it was very, like, I don't know, she has so much jealousy in her about stuff. So I was like, I didn't want to start family tea, because I already know that's happening there. And then in South Africa, I guess the different experience there was, like, I guess I could say I came from a very privileged side of South Africa. So I know a different South Africa than most people know, but I do know that racism, colorism is very much a big thing. So with, like, we still call coloreds, and we still call black people.
Black people,
like, if you call a colored person black, there's, like, if you've been on South African Twitter,
it doesn't fly.
We talk about it every day. You can't call a black person colored, no matter if they are just a tinge. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
So in South Africa, the coloreds, what happened in apartheid was essentially colored people got treated a lot better, so they got the better opportunities. It's kind of like in America how lighter skinned people worked in the houses and stuff like that. So colors got the better jobs. They got to go to the theater. They got to have better drinking water. They lived in better communities, actual houses. And then the black people lived in, like, shanty towns. We didn't really have good jobs. We went to different kind of schools. We didn't learn English per se. We learned our language, and, like, the school system was very centered around, like, black people are for labor, so they don't need to know anything else that's going on outside in the outside world, because there will never be up in the ranks kind of thing. So then when apartheid ended and we are where we are now, colored people aren't seen as black. So what's happening to them is, like, they get jobs still, but a lot of what South Africa is trying to do is, like, give black people those opportunities that we missed out on, so, like, businesses and stuff like that. And colored people are starting to be forgotten in a sense. So it's like, because you were colored, like, the government isn't, like, very, like, okay, you get these benefits. It's like, well, that time is over. It's time for this. So there's always this rivalry with blacks and coloreds that, like, okay, yes, we were treated better in apartheid, but right now we're going through this, and black people are like, but we're still going through that, and we're continuously going through that. Like, you still benefit the color of your skin, like, if you move away, etc. So in South Africa, a lot of the times people, like, when I went to school, I remember I was really the only, like, black person in my grade, because I went to a private school. But, like, I didn't, like, at the time, I guess that also didn't register in my mind that, like, oh my gosh, there's a such thing as colorism. It didn't affect me. I knew about racism because I remember this one girl wanted me to come sleep over, and her dad literally came to school and was like, there's no way that child is coming into my home. We don't accept black people unless they're cleaning. There's no way black people are coming onto my property. Him and my mom got into, my mom was very heated, but at the time she was also like, you have to understand that it's our kid. Like, I don't care what you have between black people and whatever, but your daughter, like, I wasn't crying, but his daughter was bawling. She was like, oh my gosh, like, I just want my friend to sleep over. And he was like, no, we don't let black people, we don't let brown people, we don't let anybody who's not white into our home. That is not happening. Those aren't the rules we live by. And so that he's a very like Bora South African, and like his daughter didn't understand. She was like, well, why can't my friend come over? And he's like, we just don't do that. And like she's crying, so my mom has to comfort her, and he's like, don't touch my child. And I'm standing there like, oh my goodness, like what's happening? And like I remember bits, and I was like mom, is this always going to happen in my life? Like I don't want to make my friends cry. And I was more concerned about her than the father being like, I don't want you in my house because you're Black. So I was like, well, if I'm going to make people cry, like this is like, I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to make friends cry. I don't want to make them feel bad because they're friends with me. And I'm grateful for my mom because she's been super supportive with everything. So like in South Africa, a lot of the times, like it was hard for me to sometimes be friends with colored people because it's again, like you were talking about earlier with Mamu about the classism thing, because people were like, you're Black, but you're like a privileged Black person, so you don't understand the struggle. And I'm like, I get where that's coming from, but at the end of the day, when we're both walking downtown Pretoria, listen, people are still gonna come at me. People are still gonna, etc. And this is still gonna always happen in my life. Like, I can't fix it. You can't fix it. This is just what's gonna happen all the time.
Yeah.
So then I moved to Canada, and I guess because I didn't have a lot of Black friends because of the whole privilege thing, and people were like, I don't want to be friends with her because she thinks she's bougie again. Then I moved to Canada, and I was the only Black person in my grade, so that wasn't a big thing. Like, I actually had a lot of white friends. I've had a lot of white friends. I still have white friends, and I found it easier for me to be friends with white people because there wasn't always a question of like, okay, but yeah, you're this, or like the way you talk, blah, blah, blah. And again, like in Canada, that's when I experienced the Oreo thing, because I remember this one Black girl I was talking to in high school, I forget, she was like, oh, you kind of talk weird. And people forget I've been in Canada since I was 6, so obviously my accent is no longer what it was. And she was like, you kind of talk weird. It's like you don't want to be African, but you say you're African, but you're embarrassed about us. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, you don't talk like an African. And I was like, what do you mean I don't talk like an African? And she's
like, what are
well,
Africans supposed to sound like?
Well, you have this like, exactly. And she's like, well, you have this like Canadian accent thing going on. And I was like, well, I've been here since I was 6. And like, obviously I changed my accent because everybody was like, I can't hear what you're saying. And she's like, I just think it's really odd. And she's like, you're like an Oreo. And then again, I was like, oh my gosh, I was taken back. I was like, my cousin already called me this. Like, why do you, like, I don't want to be friends with somebody like that. And like, I remember every time we talked to her, she'd always bring up my skin color. And she'd be like, why haven't you thought of bleaching? Like, your mom doesn't bleach. That's really weird. And she's like, aren't you afraid to go in the sun? And I'm like, girl, I love the sun. I think I look better in summer. But
give me all the melanin, baby.
Exactly. you do you. Like, that's fine. And then I think when I came, in high school, it was basically me being friends with a lot of white people because those were the only people that really cared, I guess, to say the least, or didn't really think like, oh my gosh, you're Black, blah, blah, you're dark skinned, and so on and so forth. So then it came, like, a lot of the time, mind you, I also didn't live in Ontario, guys. I lived in Saskatchewan, which it's like redneck county, Canada. Like, true rednecky vibes in those streets. Like, you want redneck you see on Netflix or on TV stereotypical, that is Saskatchewan for you.
I'm dead.
Sorry to drag my friends if y'all watching this. I still love you, though.
Own it, claim it, want it.
But, yeah, when I think about that, and I think about like growing up in Saskatchewan was really weird because it's always like you're the only Black person, so people are always like, well, you're Black, how do you feel this, like whatever. My mom was a little concerned, but you know, sis, I understand why. But I did go through it during high school a lot because I was like, well, nobody looks like me. The people who do look like me don't want to talk to me, or they're either in like English, the English learning program, so I can't communicate with them that way too. There's a disconnect. And then I came to Trent and I was like, oh my gosh, I got a little overexcited. I got a little too overexcited.
I found my people.
I was like, I found Black people. What?
Ready to rumble.
Then I got a little too excited and thought that I should talk to every single Black person. Girl, child, who, if I could go back to my first I would be like, you need to chill, baby girl. But anyway, I remember going home that summer. My mom was super happy that I met a lot of like Black friends and Black people because she was like, finally, like, I guess it was a sense of relief for her because she was like, she's found people who get her, stuff like that. But like Mana has said, like Mama said, like you have said, it's very hard in the Black community sometimes, though, to express certain feelings you're feeling, like especially uncomfortable conversations. especially around colorism and racism, because it's like a lot of people think, well, I don't experience this, so like how do I fit into the narrative? Or it's like you were saying earlier, like you're not black enough, and then you're just like, but what is being
What is
black? What
black?
is,
Well, what describes
like what
blackness? Who
defines
defines blackness?
exactly? So then that comes around, and then you go through another identity crisis, because you're like, yes, I found my people, but now I'm being questioned by my own people about myself, and you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa, whoa, this is weird. But I think like colorism in Canada, I've noticed it a lot. Like with my lighter skinned friends, some people have completely ignored me in conversations. I will like
Really?
people like, yeah, like people I don't know. I'll be with like a friend that's lighter skinned, and I'll be like, hi, hello, and I'll like, you know, when you could tell like people like from their body position who they're talking to. So like the body position will slowly turn during the conversation away from me, and I'm like, okay, obviously this isn't like my conversation to have, so I'll step back. And there's a lot of times that it's like with like the looser curls and everything, so people start to think, well, I don't want my child to have darker skin. I don't want my child to so and so. So like in summer, because I do spend a lot of time outside. Outside is my best friend, guys. A lot of people won't like acknowledge, or they will just be like, oh my gosh, like, don't you think you should sit in the shade? And I'm always like, why would I sit in the shade? But colorism in Canada has been super weird, because it varies from province. Like Ontario, I find, is a lot more open than Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is very, it's like it's weird in a sense, because like I know you're going to talk about colorism within the brown community. So like we have South African Indians who are like very much darker than me. Like it confuses some people, because they will come up to me and be like, oh, my doctor's black, or I saw this black person. I'm like, that wasn't a black person, that was very much like my uncle, etc. And they're like, no, he's black. And I'm like, no, I know he's not black, he is Indian. But I can even tell in those situations that when people assume that they're black, or people assume, hey Annie, or when people assume that
I'm so sorry, guys. I can't see nothing.
like,
I'm just seeing things flickering.
OMG, hey Yami, and OMG, hey Ropa. But when people assume that people are darker skinned, I know that like that causes a lot of issues. There's always the bleaching problem, and whenever so like my family is very much friends with like the Indian community in Saskatchewan, because you know people of color gotta gather when they know each other. So like I can already see like things like in those spaces are really strange sometimes, because you can tell that people are like, oh, well, she's a little bit darker, so I don't know if I want to hang out with her. Or like they tend to believe that like John was saying, like people are dealing with some sort of like black magic, or they're dealing with some sort of like
Infidelity
energies, and you're just like, that doesn't connect. But I think, like we're saying, like a lot of things are like internalized racism, and I know that I internalized a lot of all the bad things that happened to me throughout my life, and all the racism I experienced. I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna just put it under the rug. It's irrelevant. Like I don't need to talk about it. Like I talked about it with my mom occasionally. She made me read the book The Skin I'm In. I forget who the author is, but it's just about how it's essentially about being darker skin and the prejudice she feels like during her adolescence and growing up and not seeing people her color, and like her family having coloristic views. But so my mom made me read that, because obviously she was like, this girl gotta know that. The Skin I'm In? Yeah, I think it's The Skin I'm In, something like that. So I read that book and I was like, oh my gosh, like I relate, blah, blah, and stuff like that. But I feel like it's important to talk about these topics throughout different stages of our life. Oh, Annie, we're talking about colorism.
Okay, so we're talking about colorism in the... I don't want to keep squinting because I feel like I look like...
Yeah,
we're talking about colorism in the Black community.
Yeah,
and how it affects our lives.
But yeah, I think I've like, because I internalize all things, and like Mana said, as Black people, we tend to joke about things because we see it as a coping mechanism, which I realize it's not a very good coping mechanism. So like I used to joke about a lot of things all the time. I used to be like, oh, like, ha ha ha, like the sun's out, I shouldn't like go out in the sun because I'll get too blah blah blah, stuff like that. And like,
wait, sorry, Yami, guys, I don't know how to pin the topic.
Don't you just
hold
down your comment?
I'm gonna check. Give me a second. Guys, don't judge me. I'm old, okay? I'm trying. It's not working.
We're just kidding.
Try. Please. Help me. Yeah, it's not working. Anyways, it's fine. Well, I'll learn for next week. I'll learn.
Next week, yeah.
But
yeah, like I was saying, like a lot of things are internalized, so people tend to project that towards others. Mana says, "LOL, yeah." I'm sorry, guys. I don't know how to work this stuff either. I don't do lives.
Listen, if somebody knows how to do this, please help me.
Somebody please help Ropa. She doesn't know how to pin her topic.
I'm old. I can't do this.
Offer her IT assistance. She's confused.
I'm confused. I promise I'll do better. I'm gonna do my research and come back next week. Oh my gosh, Dorcas is here. Wow. Okay,
I don't know
this
who
is
you
like
are,
so
but hello.
cool. Hi, Dorcas. Okay, do you want to talk about Dorcas? You want to be next? Hit me up if you want to be next.
Wow.
Oh, I mean, I don't know who's requested. I'm just gonna be picking. Is John still here?
I don't know. John, are you still here?
Oh, he is. Okay. Whoever's next, I'm gonna see you there in the comment section. Okay.
I cannot with this girl. My goodness.
Oh my gosh. I feel like it's gonna hang up like in 3 minutes. I don't know how long we've been on here for.
You're gonna have to start a new one because apparently IG has laws about how long your live is unless you're a celebrity.
Oh, so I ain't celebrity enough for them?
You don't got the verified, Sudi. Sorry.
Wow. I am who I am. Okay.
It's okay. It's coming soon, though. It's coming soon.
All I need is about $1 zillion, and I'm there. I'm there.
A zillion. I mean, if you go back to Zim.
Listen, we're not even gonna talk about that. That's a very sore point for me. We're not gonna talk about that today.
A zillionaire.
Next question.
I'm telling you.
You guys, can I just say this is the first time I've seen Yami on any live ever.
When I tell you guys,
so the fact that like
just do comments.
Yami is out here in the streets of the Instagram,
you know what,
and talking to us.
You know what John said? It's because you summoned us. You summoned us. So did we really have a choice?
No, not really. It's cool. I appreciate that. So what I'm gonna do,
also
actually,
my comment couldn't fit about colorism and apartheid. It couldn't fit, so I was like, I'm not typing all that. Sorry.
You're right. I mean, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end this specific live situation and start another one in like exactly 1 minute, and then we can just carry on with the discussion there.
You know what,
before
Mana, you're rude too. You're a summoner. For Ropa and your blind self.
I'm all about the peer pressure, baby.
Mana said, LOL facts though with enough peer pressure. That's bullying. That's cyberbullying right there.
It's only bullying if it's like negative. So, anyways, thank you, Miss Yami. I'm gonna see you in our next live session, guys. I'm gonna see you there. We're just gonna like transfer it, and hopefully this one isn't gonna be a whole nother hour long because we've been here for 2 hours.
Where are you gonna go? It's Corona times. You can't go outside.
I got class tomorrow. Excuse me. I got summer school, baby. Yeah. So I'm gonna end this now. I will see you guys in like 1 minute. I'm gonna start another live.
Bye.
Bye.
Tizi kumira, yeah, yeah. Kushikira makuziwa, yeah, yeah.